Hello, welcome back to Scuttlebutt. We're mixing it up for you today. I'm Nick. I'm here with Nancy,
Hi.
and with Vic out and William out, we've got Colonel Tim Howe back in the house.
Hello, back again.
Guest hosting this time, not guesting. So,
I'm moving up.
all right. It's been a couple months since we talked to you, Tim. What have you been up to?
So just since last time we talked, just continuing fielding more amphibious combat vehicles, getting ready to help support first Marine Expeditionary Unit that will go out with amphibious combat vehicles here in the fall, and working through the challenges that exist with being an acquisition officer and trying to manage a large program like the PMAAA, Advanced Amphibious Assault. So, and then just driving all over Virginia to kids, field hockey and lacrosse and baseball games.
Oh,
So, yeah.
You mentioned the challenges of working through that. What would you say the biggest challenge would be?
The biggest challenge right now is we're working with the manufacturer, BAE. Certainly when you are trying to, we're about a year into it, you stand up a production line for a major vehicle like this, you're going to have some challenges. And certainly those challenges exist. With the amphibious combat vehicle, 62% of the vehicle, all the drivetrain components, things like that, are made by an Italian company called Iveco. They're owned by Fiat. In any case, so that creates a long supply chain. And so, Iveco is not sitting, in a production plant manufacturing parts. They've got second and third tier suppliers, as we call them. So that supply chain, goes from BAE, direct to Iveco for 62% of the vehicle. But once it gets to Iveco, it fractures out to all these little companies who are making things. So when there's any perturbations as it relates to COVID or just resources, or if we want to scale up production, that takes time because they have to then go get the natural resources and the money to do so. So it creates some challenges with that. We also, certainly there's some, working through some of the supply chain issues in CONUS as well. So as it relates to quality issues on the production floor and things like that, sometimes those can pop up every now and then. So just working through production, remaining on schedule. It's important because if you're not on schedule in the production plant, you're not going to remain on schedule fielding to the Marines. So knock on wood, we've remained on schedule fielding to Marines. We haven't missed a fielding yet. Don't anticipate that happening. So that's one of the bigger challenges we're working on right now is just maintaining schedule with BAE on the production floor. So and they've done a good job being transparent with respect to what their challenges are and certainly inviting us in and certainly trying to help burn some of those risks down. So.
And how much of the BAE work operation, as you're dealing with them, comes from Europe, would you say?
Yeah, certainly right now that's, kind of poignant and with everything going on in Ukraine. I know you guys have talked about in past shows. You've dedicated whole shows to Ukraine. So, like I said, 62% of the entire vehicle is from Europe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Iveco being in Italy, there are some manufacturers in France, and then it just goes from there. And so, the bulk of the vehicle comes from Europe. We have not seen any impacts as it relates to the Ukrainian conflict to date, but to be determined, right? Given some of the actions of Russia with respect to cutting off gas and fuel, and then certainly some of the actions by the EU nations. Against Russia. Not sure if that's going to impact any of the downstream suppliers and the resources that go into making those parts. It is a watch item for us that that we don't focus on it wholly, certainly, but we're kind of saying, okay, is there going to be an issue? But we haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, you got the contingencies in place just in case.
So that's difficult, right? We in some areas we try to stand up second suppliers in the U.S. But again, that takes time to get someone to learn how to make something, replicate it, and then build that at scale, right? So if I wanted a coffee cup, it's easy just to go to Walmart and buy that coffee cup. It doesn't work that way in acquisitions because we now have to work with the company to go find somebody to do that, get the drawings to make sure that it fits the vehicle, it's safe, doesn't, create any vulnerabilities in the vehicle. Then they have to go find the resources. They have to find the people to build that. They have to train them how to do that. And then they have to start manufacturing that at scale, right? So it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. So.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most common misconception people have about the acquisitions process?
I think, what we hear a lot, right, is go faster. Just go faster. And we would love to go faster. And certainly I would tell you the folks at Syscom and PEO Land Systems, which both do acquisitions, two distinct organizations, they share some resources as it relates to administrative functions. But there is I think sometimes a misconception in the acquisition process that we can just go out and buy it off the shelf and we can get it to somebody, in a couple months. It just doesn't work that way for a number of different reasons. We have the federal acquisition regulations and the DFAR, which is a subset of that puts, I don't want to say restrictions, but puts a lot of constraints on us in order to ensure that, one, the government doesn't get defrauded. We continue to, incentivize competition, right? So some of these, we call them like the big five, right? Your Raytheons, your Lockheeds, your BAEs, those type of big companies.
Right.
Well, they have the ability and the capital to just subsume a small company and not give them the opportunity to go compete. Right, so we want to maintain what we call a viable industrial base. We want to be able, in order for the country to mobilize, for the nation to go fight if we needed to, we need a lot of different people to be able to scale up and make things for the military, for the Department of Defense, just as you saw in World War II, right?
Right.
Singer Sewing Company started making 50 cals. Yeah. Well, that didn't happen overnight. So going back to the competition piece is we have to be able to allow smaller companies to compete against the bigger companies. So that takes time. And so in order to do that, you have to go through a process of source selection and looking at, each of the company's proposal to whatever it is you want to buy. And so that takes time, right? And then we have to vet and validate these products to make sure they work as intended. So we're not giving, pick a capability to a Marine and it doesn't work. When it gets to the Marine, the thing we used to say, it's a little intense, but when I was the PM for IW, success was not contracts awarded for us. Success was confirmed kills. And everybody's like, wow, that seems kind of aggressive. Well, my going in position was, and same with the ACV, every time a Marine turns on the vehicle, it should start every time. Every time a Marine pulls a trigger on a rifle, it should work. And in order for that to work, whether it be an ACV, a radio, a rifle, the acquisition process has had to have worked from development to production to contracting to testing to fielding so that when they, whether turn on a vehicle or pull the trigger or turn on the radio or key out, it works every time. So I think the biggest misconception is that, people are just sitting around and not moving fast. People are working real hard. This is tough business. I mean, it is a very, very tough business, and it'll grind you down. But people work hard, and it just doesn't happen as fast as certainly we would like it, but that's just the realities of what it is.
So it's definitely more of a marathon versus a sprint.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I say that same thing anytime I brief an organization I'm in charge of is this is a marathon, not a sprint. The key thing, I think, though, is just like in any marathon, figuring out when you need to sprint and when you need to pace yourself. And if you're not careful, just like I've done in a couple of marathons I've run, I've been limping at the end because, I didn't pace myself appropriately. So, yeah.
Well, having been on the other side of that at one of the smaller companies at HDT,
Yeah.
an Army contract, they're always sprinting, no matter
Right.
just to keep up. So it's good that you keep the tier down from General Dynamics and those guys in mind.
Yeah.
Because they overnight stuff from Utah and I drove to Oklahoma to drop off a battery and
some of these companies do a lot of the industrial base, a lot of industry, they do a lot of heavy lifting, and oftentimes they don't get credit for it, but they they're certainly industries motivated by profit, but they're patriotic Americans who a lot of them are former soldier, sailor, airmen, and Marines who just want to do the right thing, and they will.
Yeah.
They will do a lot of wonky things to make things happen, and not in a bad way. It's just, they'll do what it takes to make it happen.
They'll find the shortest distance between 2 points.
Right.
American ingenuity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if we talk, we always talk force design, or you guys talk force design, is I think that's the one of the bigger things we have over our pacing thread of China is our innovativeness, our ability to innovate. And I think that is honestly created because of our capitalist society, our democratic society, our ability to think freely, our education system that incentivizes kids to think. I don't think you see that in China, and I think that's one things that they're envious of is our ability to innovate and have that innovative spirit. And that's something that we've always had, right? Like as a country, you pick yourself up and go figure it out.
Yeah.
And how do we continue to foster this idea of ingenuity, innovativeness with young Marines?
Yeah, I think, it's funny because oftentimes, the Marine Corps can be very strict and rigid, and you have to do it this way, and we have to be very disciplined. And there's reasons for that, right? You want Marines to be disciplined because when it matters, they need to be disciplined, right? But at the same time, whether you're in training or whether you are doing maintenance, you give Marines a task and then let them go figure it out, right? That's the decentralized command and control that the Marine Corps espouses, right? That is kind of the root of maneuver warfare, but decentralized command and control. Give a Marine a task and then just step back and let them go figure out. Tell them what your expectations are, and just as you would with your kids. Here's my expectations. This is what I want you to do. This is what I expect. This is what success means to me. You go figure out how to do it. And that can be very difficult, certainly, right?
Right.
Because you have an idea, but that doesn't mean your idea is right. And if you don't allow Marines to do that, they may not find a better way, a more innovative way, or a more efficient way to do something. And then, if they do find something, that can spread throughout. So you have to let Marines figure out how to do it on their own. But with that being said, you have to give them their boundaries, but also what your end state for success is, so that they know that they, you call it commander's intent, right? If I were to give commander's intent and then I get hit by a bus, they know what success means, so they can continue the mission. So you have to give them whatever that end state is, whatever success looks like to you as the commander, and then step out of the way. And Marines have been very, very good at being very innovative and figuring out a way to do it. Oftentimes, I think commanders are their own worst enemies because they feel a need to control and not step out of the way. And that's hard to step back and just say, okay, go figure it out sometimes. But you have to, for the betterment both of your unit, for the Marine Corps, and then also for those Marines to have buy-in to the ultimate success of the unit.
It kind of parallels what you said about the acquisition process, where your results are measured in kills counted.
Yeah.
So, with the end result, making sure that you get there. I see you brought in the update for Force Design 2030.
Yeah, hot off the presses.
I'm going to plug this real quick. I just put it up on our website. You can actually get to that at mcamarines.org. There is a whole Force Design section there with all the pertinent documents. Yep. So listeners out there, if you want to get up to speed on Force Design, we've got that there. We got links to the Gazette blog that has explored it a little bit.
Right.
But the official documents that we have gathered are all there for easy consumption and analysis.
I think that's good. I think Marines need to be reading about this, foundational change and how we're going to move forward as a Marine Corps. I mean, certainly we are still going to be a crisis response force, and then that's called out in the annual update. But we have to keep pace with our pacing threat. The new National Defense Strategy just dropped. The 2022 National Defense Strategy just dropped. So I think that's what kids say. They just dropped.
Just
dropped.
It's
They
very
wouldn't
hip.
say the whole thing, though.
Very
Like that NDS
At 46, I turned 46 tomorrow. I'm still trying to
happy
remain
birthday.
relevant. That was just trying to get someone to say happy birthday to me. But in any case, Marines need to keep pace of what's going on, no matter what rank, because it's going to affect everybody. So
anything stand out to you in the
Yeah, I
Update?
mean, I think what stands out most to me, I think, in all this, and I won't get into certainly each of what is called out in here. I was reading it last night, but really, the Commandant did a good job talking about, hey, what's most critical in this annual update and the force design effort is this campaign of learning, right? And any organization that's successful has to be a learning organization. And, you know, if we're not, a learning organization is only successful if it's willing to take a critical eye at what we're doing and say, okay, are these the right assumptions that we're making? Let's validate those assumptions, right? And we do that through wargaming. So that's important. And I'm happy to see that he calls that out in here. He also calls out one of our warfighting functions of, you know, command and control is above all others at this point. You know, and when you consider force design and what we are going to do with expeditionary advanced space operations, you know, certainly in the Indo-PACOM, command and control is going to be most critical. And then the other thing I am happy that he called out in here is the role of logistics and why it's so important to get that right if we're going to sustain small units doing the reconnaissance, counter-reconnaissance fight, certainly in the weapons engagement zone as stand-in forces. So I thought it was a good document. And I think, you know, certainly I think there's been some pushback as of late with respect to what the Commandant's trying to achieve to do. He states that in here that, hey, maybe we didn't advertise what we're doing as well as we could have. But again, I go back to any good learning organization has to take a critical eye so that they let people question what you're doing, because that uncovers any blind spots that you may have missed. And then be okay with people questioning it so that you can learn and get better through, you know, certainly with wargaming and some of the experimentation that we're doing.
Yeah, especially as it's fleshed out, because even before he released the first document, he was talking about the command and control stand-in force stuff, the education stuff, and some of the logistics stuff too even kind of peeked in there before it came out. But, so it's been kind of consistent throughout, and as it's been fleshed out and it's been challenged, you're right, it's good that that can be addressed.
Yeah, and they've gone back and they've re-looked at it and said, okay, yeah, right, the role of logistics hasn't been looked at as well as we probably should have. We need to take a hard look at that, and we need to get that right. And so what's clear in the tone and tenor of this update is, hey, we've continued to learn, we continue to learn, and we will, you know, keep at this as we continue to implement this. We will continue looking for areas to learn and move forward. So this isn't like a static document. Here's force design. Everything aligns that. Here's the concept. We're going to validate it through wargaming and then assess, learn, change, you know, and then keep doing that. So I think that's important.
Yeah, and one of the things that's kind of come out since it came out is the expansion on talent management.
Yeah.
Trying to get our hands around updating how we manage the talent in the Marine Corps. I think it's happening in the other branches too, to some extent.
Yeah, I think so.
But in the Marine Corps, it seems particularly striking because they're talking about lateral entry and things like that. But I haven't been hearing too much, and I'd like to just kind of touch on just the traditional course of entry for the Lance Corporals.
Yeah.
Is there any big changes in talent management on that end, have you heard?
So I think as far as Lance Corporals and you know, certainly Marines coming in, I think, you know, we have been a force that I think we turn over, and I'm going to throw out a number here that might be wildly off, but we turn over a significant amount of Marines. Like I think it's like 2/3 of the Marine Corps turns over almost every year, right? Like it's very much we are the youngest force, we're the youngest service in the DoD, and we are very much. I think I remember reading a document the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps came out with is. We are a young force that we turn over very quickly, and so it's a recruit, and then we recruit them and then spit them out 4 years later, right? We don't focus on the retention piece. So one of the things I think, and they talk a little bit about it in talent management, but I've seen it in the talent management document, but that the Commandants had published, but is really trying to get Marines into the right areas based upon kind of like their, I don't know, like I don't want to say psychological skill set, you know, but like
your interest.
Yeah, what are they good at, right? Like a lot of times some Marines come in on an open contract. Okay, we're going to make you an 0311 infantry Marine. when really that Marine might have been better suited as a, data tech or a network, working networks or doing space operations or what, pick something, right?
Yeah.
And so really I think they're trying to tailor Marines towards what they would be better suited for. And I think they do that through some level of testing before they come in, so that, okay, we're going to put you there and, hopefully you thrive there and then stay in longer. I think is one aspect. Overall, that talent management piece, I think, and this is my opinion, is rooted towards kind of growing the maturity of the force, in the sense that we have a little bit older force. Because if you're going to be asking Marines at the small unit level to do reconnaissance, counter reconnaissance out on their own, you need a mature force that can make decisions with a maturity level that's appropriate to that level of decision, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Lance corporals are awesome. I mean, it is they're, I certainly follow Terminal Lance. That's kind of one side of it, right? Like that's the salty, cynic side of the Marine Corps,
Yeah.
and that's one of the areas that just I love about Marines, is they will find any way to just, blow off steam. But on the other side, Lance corporals are vitally important because they execute what the NCOs ask them to do, right? And they should be that garden of growth before they become non-commissioned officers, which will be the leadership, really of the Marine Corps. And I know it's kind of cliche. It's like, the NCO is the backbone of the Marine Corps, but they truly are. Like, the longer I stick around, like, truly corporals and sergeants are the ones who make it happen, right? And they can't make it happen without PFCs and Lance corporals. I think the hardest transition in the Marine Corps is for a Lance corporal to a corporal, right? Because there needs to be that bifurcation of, I'm a non-commissioned officer now. My son's a sergeant, and couldn't have been more proud than when he became a corporal, and then was even more proud than when he became a sergeant. But that transition from Lance corporal to corporal, because all your Lance corporals, you're all buddies, right? Like hanging out and doing things, and then you become an NCO, and you're supposed to separate yourself a little bit, because now I'm a leader, and the expectation is I'm going to be successful at leading these Marines to go do things, and then going into harm's way if necessary, and executing the orders that I give to them. I mean, heck, your average age of a corporal, I would posit, is probably about 20 to 21 years old in the Marine Corps. And for the last 20 years, my son's 24. He's a sergeant, right? It might be a little bit older than your average sergeant. I think it's about 5 years for a sergeant. I could be a little bit off. But, they're leading 13 hard-charging Marines, like, out on patrols in Afghanistan and Iraq. And you talk about the strategic corporal, and this is, that's a huge responsibility, and you can't do that without having good Lance corporals and PFCs below you who are smart. Certainly they're goofy, like they're still developing, as young men and women.
They're on that TikTok.
Yeah, right. Yeah. These are the same kids who look like they're having a seizure online doing these dances, but are willing to go out and die for their country. So, as far as talent management goes with Lance corporals, I think fitting them into the right area that they're interested in order to retain them and create that more mature force certainly is one aspect of the Marine Corps. I know you had mentioned kind of this lateral entry into the Marine Corps.
Yeah,
and
that's where most of the attention is like trying to pull in experts who are already in the field.
Right.
But to your point about trying to get the Marines into careers, I guess, the MOS career, that would naturally have to age up the Corps, because you don't want to have a whole bunch of cyber guys cycling out every, 4 to 8 years. They need to be able to be entrenched and kind of see how things are evolving and kind of know what's going on.
It's funny you mention like cyber and, those type of skill sets that, on the network side, huge competition for talent as it relates to that type of skill set. Because they can go out in industry, work for Microsoft, work for a software company,
right,
and make a lot of money, far more than the Marine Corps could offer. So how do you retain that, right? And so I know there's been some gnashing of the teeth of bringing folks in, maybe bringing them in as gunnies or sergeants, and maybe they don't go through boot camp. And there is certainly that aspect that boot camp and OCS are rites of passage that you should have to go through. I would offer. I think the Commandant's Own. They don't go to boot camp, right? Or the President's Own.
President's
the band,
Own.
the president.
Right.
They
Right.
don't go to boot camp. But,
Correct.
they're in the band. They are Marines, right? So.
They audition for those slots.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm at PhDs, but the point is like there is a competition for talent right now that we have to be able to compete at. Otherwise, we're going to be behind our adversaries as it relates because they're state sponsored. They can direct that talent, right? You look at Russia with, I think, Fancy Bear is their major, that's a major cyber hacking type entity within Russia, that whatever their Russian cyber division is, but we have to compete for that talent. And so I think the Commandant's just trying to find any way to compete for that talent so that we can stay ahead of our pacing threat. And that might be uncomfortable for a lot of folks who believe that they have to come through boot camp or OCS. And I don't know how you cross that T or dot that I, but we may just have to get comfortable being uncomfortable with trying to attract talent.
And how do you incentivize? Because if they're in that market, right, they're in the cybersecurity market, which is vast and all-encompassing and global now and always evolving. How do you incentivize folks to stay on board for the long haul versus being able to just bounce from contract to contract? Anytime things go wrong, they could just pop over to the
certainly
next one.
One way we do it is, look, I don't want to portray Marines who are in these skill sets that have the opportunity as just money hungry. I mean, they're good, patriotic folks who are just they want to do it because they want to serve their country. And as much as older generations think kids don't want to do that, they are. I mean, the last 15 years we had kids volunteering to go to combat.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't have that in Vietnam. You got drafted, and now you got kids who signed up at time of war, knowing what they were getting into. That's something that there are patriotic kids out there that want to sign up. With that being said, some of your skill sets, right? Like my son's an air traffic controller. You can't create an air traffic controller overnight.
No.
So a tough school to get through. I mean, very academically challenging school to get through. I couldn't do it.
Very
I don't know how he does it. High stress.
I think it has like the highest suicide rate in the private industry.
Really, Nick?
I've seen Pushington.
Yeah,
okay. John Cusack told me. So I'm pretty much an expert.
I would like to think that our Marines are a lot more resilient.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I threw in the private sector in there.
But that being said, they can't recreate him, so he had to sign up for a 5-year contract. And then and I'm not saying throwing money out keeps them, right? Patriotism helps. Opportunity to lead certainly is a big motivator. But then there's opportunities for reenlistment bonuses to incentivize. Because my son, right, like his MOS, he can walk out the door now and go work for the FAA and make good money. Certainly it's stressful, but that's why they make a lot of money because it is stressful. There's a huge amount of responsibility. But to try to incentivize him, they might offer him a big bonus to reenlist in order to keep that talent. I think they did that with pilots too, right?
Right.
Nancy, you would know this, right? Given your background in naval aviation history, they had to go to flight pay, right, in some degree, and then they were offering bonuses to retain pilots who could, when the economy is strong and the commercial airline industry is strong, you see pilots going out to the commercial world.
Right.
So
Because, like you said, same situation. You can't create a pilot overnight, and it's expensive to do that.
Absolutely. So back to your question, how do we kind of keep these folks in? That's one opportunity, maybe to do that. The reserves. I think the role of the reserves is huge. In the sense that you bring people in from industry, they serve their time. Hey, you want to serve, but still, work in private industry. We're going to capture that skill in the reserve sector, so that might be an opportunity too to kind of incentivize that talent. Is hey, you can still serve and work in the private industry.
That kind of feels like the traditional. I can't say traditional, like the last 2 or 3 decades role of the reserves is to
it's been huge.
Capture the capture industry.
We could not have done the last. I mean, as a Department of Defense and certainly as a Marine Corps, we could not have continued at the pace we did in Afghanistan and Iraq without the reserves plugging holes and then, I mean, when a reserve unit mobilizes, it's not just a 7-month deployment. There is a whole like 2 or 3 months leading up to that where they're doing pre-deployment training, and then they leave. Like they don't see their family ostensibly almost for 9-10 months. So a lot of credit to those individuals and a lot of credit again. Go back to the industrial base, to the country, to say, hey, we're going to put your job on hold until you come back.
Right.
So
yeah, I think that the USMCR is kind of underrepresented in the grand scope of our understanding of the U.S. defense. So,
I think so too. I don't think they get I don't think they get as much credit as they deserve.
Yeah.
So back to this new approach to talent management. In your opinion, how do you think the Marine Corps can overcome a resistance to this sort of new way of thinking?
I think you're always gonna. All you can do is you can explain why you're doing it, right? What's the inherent importance of changing your methodology? That's be transparent. This is why. In order to compete for talent against industry, in order to stay ahead of our pacing threat, we have to do this. Here are our ideas. Certainly, then internally, you have to get buy-in, right? So you get buy-in by, hey, bringing people in to develop courses of action on how to retain talent is another one. And then just consistent and constant messaging that this is why we're doing that, and this is why we're doing this, and this is why. I think you're always going to have those who are, you got the folks on one side of the fence, the folks on the other side of the fence. One group's in, one will never get, and then you got people sitting on the fence who are trying to figure it out, and those are the people you're competing for,
Right.
their understanding. And look, it's a fast-paced world where there are a lot of opportunities for people to do things, work from home, remote work. Hey, I work for a company in Germany, but they allow me to live in Omaha.
Sure.
It's hard for the Marine Corps to compete. And 1952, you couldn't do that. So
Right.
if you're a kid out of high school or out of college, and you're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. Job market's like, maybe I'll go serve my country. Well, now your options are expanded because of the evolution of the internet and the ability to work from home, and you have to compete for that talent, and so some people might be turned off at the idea of going to boot camp. They don't want to be yelled at. They don't want to be put through that, and maybe they just want to come in and work that. And then from our side, what do we get out of it? We get something. We get somebody who has worked in that industry or worked in that space,
Right.
and are very good. We just have to be comfortable with them coming in saying, okay, you're a Marine now. Yeah, we recognize you didn't go to boot camp, and then go forward. So,
Do you think most of the resistance, again, just your opinion, most of the resistance is going to come from active duty ranks or from veteran Marines?
yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
That's why they
Tim
pay me
House-
the big bucks.
You and me both, right? Tim Howe's opinion, I think it may be probably tilt more towards the veterans. Just my opinion. I think active duty are very, very adaptive and understanding.
Sure.
They're living it every day. They see it
and
every
they
day.
see the benefits.
Yeah.
Right. I think the veteran side, and this is not everybody. This is not a panacea for every veteran, but
Well, I think we all get caught up in the idea, if we've done something
that's the
and
only
we've
way.
moved on, like, oh, well, the way we did it when I was
Right.
doing it, that's the right way.
But I think, and what's crazy is you can look through the history of Marine Corps, and I think you can find times where not everybody went to boot camp. It may or may not.
Korean War,
Not
yep.
everybody went to boot
Yep.
camp. In fact, they plucked them and just shipped them direct to Korea. They
they-
went to the
they
Pendleton.
trained on troop ships.
Yep. They did a stop in Pendleton, and then they trained on troop ships on how to engage. I think Give Me Tomorrow is a great book. Just Give Me Tomorrow is a great book that talks to that.
Well, and just a personal story, my dad is a retired Navy doctor. And when he graduated from medical school in the early 1960s, he was automatically drafted
Right.
and was assigned to a submarine. Now, before he made his first patrol on a nuclear submarine, he had 5 days,
Perfect.
5 days of training as a naval officer.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was on a 120-day patrol on
Right.
a nuclear submarine. So there you go.
So yeah, I mean, history is chock full of times when Marines didn't go to boot camp and they performed magnificently. I mean, Korea's Chosin Reservoir
Sure.
is a perfect example of that. I think it's Golf Company 3-1. That's the basis of the book of Just Give Me Tomorrow. A lot of those guys didn't go to boot camp. So we're kind of, in this period now where, while it's not we don't have North Korea, running south into South Korea, but we are in a crisis in the sense that we're competing for talent against a pacing threat that's moving faster than we are. And I think that's what the Commandant's trying to get at is, hey, maybe we don't send them through boot camp. Maybe there is some, shorter abridged version. I don't know. But something has to give in order to get that talent in to compete in that space, to give ourselves an unfair advantage over our adversary.
Yeah. Now, just tying all that back in, bringing China back into it, bringing the ACVs back into it. Let's just kind of focus in on Tim now and see kind of how is this all kind of affecting you as you're trying to manage talent, manage resources, manage pacing threats, manage changing doctrine.
So really, how it affects like the Force Design Annual Update, they certainly as we look at stand-in forces, as we looked at, or as they continue to war game and look at expeditionary advanced space operations. And I talked earlier about, are we validating our assumptions? There might be some, there might be a need to look, and I'm not saying this, but the Marine Corps might say, hey, look, is the ACV the right vehicle for certain mission role variants in the future based upon what we want to try to do? Is that the right platform? Is that the right capability? Is a vehicle the right platform for the capability that we need? So that's really how it all ties back to me. The talent management piece, certainly if I could bring people in from industry, we've got a lot of good folks in PMAAA, but if I could incentivize people to come in from industry, and serve in the government for a brief period and go back, and there's opportunities to do that. So on the talent management piece, as it relates to bringing Marines in to do niche skills, that doesn't really affect me so much. We've got a lot of good uniform Marines there that I'm always trying to, hey, have you thought about acquisitions, and going that route. But the government civilians we have in PMAAA at least, they're smart folks who, like I said earlier, they work hard. But really, force design, pacing threat of China, that really impacts the ACV program, and that we've got to stay a step ahead. They've got an expeditionary fighting vehicle-like vehicle that they, looks very much like our old EFV that we were building that the program was ultimately canceled. And then certainly I just saw an article the other day that they were talking about a MEU, I think, helping out certainly either in the Black Sea or somewhere near the Ukrainian conflict. If ACVs were on that, they may have a role in that as well. So that gives us greater sense of urgency to make sure we're getting it right, remaining on schedule with respect to these fieldings so that Marines have that capability when they're called.
All right. Got anything talent management related to add to the pile, Nancy?
No, not answered a lot of questions.
Yeah. Well, I just want to transition to something a little bit more lighthearted fare while we got you here.
Because of course. Why not?
Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we talked about the important stuff. Now let's talk about the important stuff.
The really important stuff.
So recruiting is down in the Marine Corps, I hear.
Okay.
And I'm transitioning into Top Gun Maverick, the movie, which is a sequel that's been delayed for 3 years now, I think.
Yes.
But the original came out in '86
Yeah.
and increased Navy recruitment by 500% and Marine Corps recruitment by about double, I think.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah.
that number is not as easy to grab. The Navy were
Right.
the ones hanging out outside the movie theaters.
Yeah. My brother had that haircut that Tom Cruise had,
Yeah.
back in the 80s. He got that haircut. There are a lot of people that are like, I want to be a Navy pilot because of Top Gun.
Listen,
Yeah.
I was going to college in Pensacola, the
Oh.
cradle of naval aviation.
There you go. Yeah.
I started school in 1989 there.
Yeah.
And essentially it was that first group of mostly guys at the
Yeah,
time
yeah,
who had seen Top Gun, and they were there in flight school because of Top Gun.
Driving fast motorcycles.
Yeah.
There was a leather shortage too for the jackets. I don't know if you guys knew that. They couldn't make the jackets fast enough.
I had an apartment complex with my apartment looked out onto a sand volleyball court.
Perfect.
And let me tell you what, there was not one damn game of volleyball that ever took place there. I think a cat used it as a litter box one time. It was not Top Gun. It was not happening.
Yeah.
It was not happening.
I think the Top Gun soundtrack is the only one that's better than that is the Rocky IV soundtrack.
Rocky IV is good.
It's fantastic. I'm looking forward. I've seen some. I just probably like you guys. Have you seen some like trailers
Sure.
and some
Just watched.
leaked-
There's only so many ways you can cut a trailer when you've delayed your movie by 2 years.
Right.
But
So my understanding is in the first Top Gun, Tom Cruise didn't fly in that, and so I kind of have some ties to that first movie and who was really doing the flying. And I think it was some guys out of the checkerboards. I think it's 365 or 362 in Beaufort did some of the flying for him in that movie. At least one person I know did. And my understanding is he didn't do the flying, but I think in this one, he did not like actual doing the piloting, but he's actually in the plane during this movie. But I'm not sure. So
well, with how ridiculous he is about doing his own stunts, that wouldn't surprise me.
yeah,
If what's his name from Star Trek can fly a jet, surely Tom Cruise can. The Klingon Worf.
out of my league, man.
What is that actor's name?
I don't know.
What? I don't know what you're talking
He
about
can
right
fly
now.
a jet. So that's the
Worf
important
can
thing.
fly a jet.
Worf, the actor
I
who
don't even-
plays Worf.
Does that
Worf?
Star
Yeah.
Is that
Trek?
his name?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Worf. Yeah, can fly.
Are
yeah.
you Star Trek or Star Wars camp?
Star Trek.
Like
Honestly,
I'm like William Shatner Star Trek.
yeah. Until very recently, it was probably a pretty easy case to make. But now, so much bad Star Wars is out, so much bad Star Trek is out. Like,
Yeah.
do you even want to pick a team anymore? Like,
Yeah. It's funny. You go back to like movies and recruiting and like how influential like Hollywood can be on recruiting. Certainly, Full Metal Jacket is
Yes.
a big Marine movie.
Yep.
I think I showed that to my wife on Valentine's Day. So it wasn't a hit. Don't worry. One of my many failures as far as Valentine's Day movie.
Did you make it all the way through? Did
Yeah,
you
she
get to
wasn't
the Mickey
impressed.
Mouse
No,
song?
she wasn't
I have
impressed.
no words for that.
So, but certainly that was a big recruit. I think the movie was American Sniper about Chris Kyle. That
Yeah.
was a big hit. But I don't remember any like major Marine movies as of late.
They did some back in the 20s, the 1920s.
That's
They had
awesome.
Lon Chaney as the Marine, and they were able to.
Well, there's the DI.
Yeah.
Later
Yeah.
on, a few years later, that was
so,
a big hit.
Like they were
Yeah.
big in the
Jack
movie
Webb.
industry all the way through
yeah, that's it.
World
Yeah,
War II.
absolutely. Yep. I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out who played
Yeah.
the DI. Good pull.
We had that in Leatherneck a couple of at
okay.
the time, and then later on we revisited that.
Yeah. But we haven't really had like a Top Gun type
No.
Marine movie. I mean, you always have like the character who was like, I was a Marine, this like crestfallen,
Yeah.
like I'm in trouble. Like they need to change the narrative of the Marine veteran, not this,
Well, John Cena was the Marine in the Marine.
well, exactly. There you go. So
Wherein I think, did he even fire a gun in that? Like, I think he was mostly just wielding a Bowie knife, but
yeah, I don't know. I think I was reading Stars and Stripes. I get it with my local paper every Friday, and they had like top 10 worst like veteran intros to movies.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think we need to like change the narrative of the Marine and the Marine veteran. Like, there are a lot of smart
Yeah.
Marines.
Let's write a screenplay.
I'm on
That's
board.
what I'm hearing
Yeah.
you say.
I
That
am
we're
on
going to
board.
write a screenplay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
and we won't even
Absolutely.
use a crayon to write it.
The lead
so.
actor will be an acquisition officer.
There you go.
The whole world is waiting on his ability to navigate the federal acquisition regulation and get
Yeah.
a contract awarded.
He's just got a stack
like
of
it.
papers over here.
I'm going to start working on it this afternoon.
He's waiting for the fax machine to.
That's right.
Fax machine.
That's right.
What year is this?
I'm pretty sure. Don't you use a fax machine?
No,
Like, you don't use that
I don't
anymore.
use the fax.
Where was
it's right
I?
next to my dot matrix
We were,
printer.
Yeah, right? Fax machine?
Yeah, your fax machine and your dot matrix. You're just waiting because you have this ancient archaic technology. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Man. So back to Top Gun. I couldn't wait to show Top Gun to my youngest son, who he's 22 now, but he was learning to fly from the time he was about 8 years
super
old.
Cool. Yeah.
So basically, he was about 13, 14, maybe 15. My husband and I are like, you've got to see Top Gun. It's the greatest. You're gonna love it. He came away from it. He couldn't even watch the whole thing. He said, "This is the worst. He is the worst officer and the worst pilot I have ever seen." Because
Maverick.
he doesn't get it.
Stands
buzzed
up
the
to the
tower.
admiral.
He doesn't get it. He
buzzed
still
the
doesn't get
tower.
it.
Yeah, Buzz the Tower. He stood up to the admiral. I think in Top Gun 2, isn't he like the admiral now?
No, he's trying to avoid.
Oh no,
getting
he's
promoted.
a captain. He's a
Yeah.
Navy captain.
Yeah, he's trying to do the career,
Ugh, the
career
worst.
thing.
No, but
So they could keep being a test pilot.
he's like a Navy captain, but he's still
Yeah.
doing like
Yeah, he does-
things that a Navy lieutenant would be doing, right?
Yeah, it's been like 20 years since he last got a promotion. So he's,
Yeah, not to diverge from like recruiting films, but I showed my kids Goonies.
yeah.
And
Oh,
they
yeah.
were like, I thought that was the greatest movie of all time. Like, I was like, oh my God, Data, and
Hey, you guys.
yeah, right, yeah, and like Chunk, and these are someone's wishes, and I mean, it's so awesome. And then we watched it. I was like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. It wasn't as good as I remembered.
It's
it.
shorter than you remember too, right?
Yeah,
Like it
yeah.
moves, and it's over, and you're like, wait, this movie was like 2 hours long
Right.
when I was a kid. Now all of a sudden it's like barely over an
So
hour.
I
Like,
haven't watched Top Gun, but I did have my son watch Rocky 4 like 3 weeks ago. He sprained his ankle really kind of bad, sliding into third during a doubleheader, and he's all down. He's really kind of having a breakout baseball season. He's 7th grade, and I was like, look, this is all about the comeback now. Like, so we've got to watch Rocky 4, and you've got to watch the training scene in Russia. This is the key to the whole thing. Your comeback is going to be like Rocky's, and he was like, what?
you probably should have started with the first 3 Rockies.
Yeah, he had a lot
And
of
never
questions.
tell him there's a 5th one.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw the 5th one. I stopped at 4.
The 5th one is not. The final fight is like a brawl in an alley.
Yeah.
It's like
I thought it was poignant too because Russia, and
Yeah.
we were like, we beat Drago, and,
Yeah.
and given Russia and
I
it's
must-
through the
Ukraine.
power of sports, we can all come together.
Oh yeah, well it was
Yeah.
completely political statement at the
Yeah.
end. Certainly it
Yeah.
was the height of the Cold War, and
I think the actor, I'm totally off the rails here. The actor who played Drago had a PhD in something
what was
science
his name?
related.
I looked up his
like,
name.
As soon as you need to know it, you're not going to know it. Because I was
My
just.
mind just blanked.
Um,
Dolph Lundgren.
Dolph Lundgren. Good for
Swedish.
you.
Swedish
Nice. That's the second deep pull you've pulled.
guy. It's
she's great at
This is-
trivia.
This is what you get when you read Leatherneck magazine,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
All my trivia, all my knowledge.
That's Jeopardy level right there.
She's good to have at the table at the bar for trivia.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and back to the movies, I guess, that actually do recruiting. The Navy did take a swing about, 8 years ago with Battleship? They put a bunch of money into that, and then it, flopped hard.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was
Never
like a
saw it.
$214 million movie, and it made, $35 million at the box office.
Yeah, and I'm going to speak completely out of my lane, but recruiting, that is a tough business. Both as a recruiter, those guys and gals, you want to talk about, man, that's a tough business. Just trying to canvas and talk to young kids and who to tell that, to get them to join the Marine Corps and show them why it's a great service. But then all the different ways, we Marines used to have a NASCAR that we sponsored. I don't know if we do that anymore. I just saw that they had 2 AVs to bring this all full circle. They had 2 AVs at Daytona for people to come see, and they turned on the smoke
Did they go
generation
through Lake
system.
Lloyd down there in the infield?
No, they were just parked. But any way you can get to these kids. I don't know if the Marine Corps has a TikTok channel, or certainly they've got an Instagram channel I follow. So,
Yeah.
but
COVID must have changed everything too for
Yeah.
recruiters because how do you get the kids to see you? Because that's part of it is
right,
kids seeing you in uniform.
yeah, and
you're-
you
you
can't
know-
go out or what have you. I don't know how they did that, but boy, what a tough. That is a tough business. That to do what they need to do. But anyways,
Yeah, and with the changing messaging from above about what we're doing going forward, people kind of being afraid of not afraid, wary of war after being in there for 20 years.
Yeah.
Because the kids that need to be recruited now weren't even born when 9/11 happened.
Yeah, that's
So,
crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy. I always said I'd feel old when I go to the Marine Corps ball, and the youngest Marine was born after I was commissioned, and just because the organization, I think we had a little bit more senior Marines. I think I hit that the last one. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's a crazy kind of thing to think about. So.
Yeah. Well, let's just talk about some interesting stuff then.
Okay.
So the Sikorsky CH-53K has been approved. I forget which part of the process.
So I think they passed their IOT&E, their initial operational test and evaluation, which is kind of like your last big event before you are allowed to go into production, full rate production. So that's a big milestone for the CH-53 Kilo. I don't know. I'm going to speak a little bit out of my lane on the aviation acquisition side, but I do know the capability of that aircraft, that platform is far better than what they had.
Significant. I think it was almost doubles or does double the
amount of weight that it can carry.
And
I think it carried JLTV, which is significant for longer distance. And again, I'm not going to spit numbers because I just don't know them, and I don't want to. I don't know if
they're all public anyway. So
yeah, I'm not sure either. But important for us in force design to support movement of both troops and necessary logistics if we're going to be in an austere environment from a distance far enough out to where you don't put your amphibious shipping possibly into harm's way, and you have that ability to use that rotary wing to put either lift troops or supplies or what have you to wherever you need to go. So that's a huge win for the Marine Corps, a big win.
Yeah, there was exhaust issues I think they were working through for the past 18 months, and
yeah. I was what was I listening to? I read an article. I was listening. It's all open source where he was ingesting.
Its own
it was
exhaust.
Scuttlebutt. I think I was listening to
Were we
Scuttlebutt.
talking
You were
about
talking
that?
about it.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's why I know about it.
Yeah,
Jeez.
it was
Okay.
ingesting exhaust
Yeah.
back into the engine, so they had to
Yeah.
go clean that up.
Yeah, so that was. I don't know if you've seen the solution on it, but this basically just has exhaust pipe that like
That's
tailpipes
right,
now
yeah.
that just push it way out of the way.
Right,
so.
right. I thought it was Scuttlebutt. I was listening to your last episode that you were talking about that.
Our last episode we were talking about art, so I doubt we talked about the CH-53.
No.
Yeah, it's something I've wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
But I was waiting for the right moment.
I
And
listened
this
to
is the right
and
moment.
this is the right moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
I
I'm
heard
glad
it
I'm here for
somewhere.
this.
Yeah. Some stray information. Just I heard
Yeah.
it. So.
Yeah, so it was ingesting its own exhaust, and they were working on that for over a year. And it's outside looking in, it was like, well, duh, you just extend the pipes. But clearly, it's always more complicated than that.
Yeah, it's not as easy. That's
Yeah.
the other thing. You go back to Nancy had mentioned about the acquisition process. To make a change is not easy. Sometimes if you want to get it cut into production, it can be difficult, right? Because it's got to go through a whole process to make sure that you're not creating more risk. So that has to get vetted and validated. Oftentimes, going back to the Lance Corporal, right, and you had asked the question about how do you foster that innovation is, Marines see a problem, let them fix it, and then if it works, get that out there to the rest of the fleet.
So if the Marines can see a problem they can fix, and we're hypothetically talking about Sikorsky now, not BAE, but say it was BAE you were dealing with. So, and they see the problem, how do you communicate what their idea is to the engineers at BAE or Sikorsky?
So we bring them in and discuss, okay, here's the problem that we're seeing. We have them, we have a lot of interface and interaction with the Fleet Marine Force, and we get a lot of their feedback. We just had the Assault Amphibian School, a lot of their senior leaders and junior Marines up to the York plant to look at the vehicle, and they were offering a lot of good ideas. So opportunities like that, and then we're going to set up kind of a periodic interface between ourselves, certainly BAE as the manufacturer, and the fleet to, hey, what are you seeing? What are do you have any ideas? And then you just go from there. And then certainly engineers have to take it to make sure it doesn't create any vulnerabilities or risk to the overall. And then can they implement that? Right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and back to the acquisitions process as a whole, it's not just about the piece of equipment, whatever it is we're talking about, whether it's a helicopter or a rifle. It's more than just that equipment. You have to make sure there's the training manual.
Yeah.
Those who are going to be working on whatever that piece of equipment is and getting them up to speed.
Yep, and then you have to be able, whatever that change is, right? Then you're going to have to be able to maintain that change and whatever that is. To your point, the training is the biggest piece. How does this change the overall employment of that capability, and how do you train people to that change? Oftentimes, I think you just think of small little fix. Sometimes these can be big fixes too. So.
Yeah. And then I guess that'll lead us to the final thing I want to talk about. Are you going to be up at the expo next?
I will be.
Modern Day Marine.
I
Expo?
will be. Yep. We will be briefing the APBI brief. It's a brief to industry on the first day, and then I think it kicks off officially on the 10th. So I'll be there that day, and then we have the grand banquet that night. So.
Do you have any ACVs on the floor?
There will be two. BAE will have what they call their variant of the Advanced Reconnaissance Vehicle, as well as another variant, Organic Precision Fires variant that they'll both have there. So,
okay. So I'm going to say it's going to be at the BAE booth then.
It will be.
That's why it's got such a big footprint.
Absolutely.
I was looking at the floor plan. So if you're going to have two vehicles on the floor, you need some space for that.
And big change with Modern Day Marine this year.
Yeah, up in D.C.
Up in D.C. Location is the
Walter E. Washington
Convention
Center, which is about 4 or 5 blocks northeast of the White House. So
right.
Yes.
That's a big win. This is a long time coming. I think I was just listening to another podcast on the way over here, the Marine Corps Systems Command podcast. I think it's called Equipment Corps, and they interviewed the ACMAC, and I know Lieutenant General Faulkner retired, and Lieutenant General Sherrodi retired. Been working at getting that thing moved up there. So that's the right thing to do, and I think it elevates the modern day Marine to now a level like Sea Air Space, and
right.
Not that it wasn't credible before, but this puts it, I think, on another level. So that's important for the Marine Corps. Go back to recruiting, another opportunity for recruiting. So
you have to be a Marine or industry to get into it, but I wonder if there's a situation in the future where there's like a just to help with recruiting, maybe like a public, like
that's fair.
6 hours, like on a Thursday or Friday after everybody's done with everything.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But that's not our decision to make.
No, well above my pay grade.
Yeah.
Anyway, any other logs to throw on the fire, guys?
No, I just want to say, though, for the record, we're recording this podcast on what's known as Yom HaShoah, or Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Yep.
Just wanted to put that information out there.
Yeah, I saw Zelensky was talking about that.
Yeah.
President of Ukraine. So.
Very poignant. Colonel Woodbridge had mentioned a good book about Ukraine called Bloodlands, and I've been listening to that on Audible, and so certainly that's relevant, Nancy, because the introduction talks significantly about both the Holocaust, with the Germans, and then certainly with Stalin too. So, but certainly very relevant in that, and what why we're here today too. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I appreciate that. It's I hope. I think I just saw. There was some older, certainly older is redundant, but there's some Holocaust survivors. I think just published a video about the Holocaust, and I think my biggest fear as we get as more and more Holocaust survivors pass away, hopefully we don't forget that atrocity,
right?
That's my biggest fear, is that kids today don't have a good understanding of just how horrific that was. So.
It's important to keep telling those stories,
or
they are forgotten.
Well. Good book. Another good book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Great book to read. He was a Holocaust survivor. I think he went to Auschwitz. His wife, I think his daughter, went to another concentration camp. We never saw him again, but he's a very big he was a psychologist, but very good book, just talking about, his experiences and then how he was able to get through that. Really the basis for cognitive-based therapy and things like that. So Man's Search for Meaning.
I'm going to check
very
that
good
out.
book.
I haven't
really
heard of
good
that.
book. Fascinating. It's both a sad and disturbing read with respect to what he had to go through, as well as it's a good book. I think for Marines, we talked about PTSD. I forget the name of the gentleman you brought in here early on in the podcast series, and he made it. He something that's really resonated with me. He talked about that British SAS who had gone all over the world, and in his memoirs, it's like 5 pages, about that, and then. And I forget the gentleman's name that he had in here. I really feel bad that I forgot, but he's like, don't get stuck in that chapter of your life. Yes, remember it, but don't get stuck in that chapter in life. And that kind of goes in towards some of what, like Viktor Frankl, that is a period of your life. You need to move on.
Yeah.
So I think, that book is relevant, certainly for Marines who are struggling with PTSD. So.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah.
I believe you were talking about Miles Vining.
Yeah, absolutely. Good.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I apologize to Miles for not remembering his name.
Yeah.
So.
This is why
So-
Nick and I are always on a trivia team together.
Yeah, no doubt. No
Yeah.
doubt. I thought I was good at Jeopardy, but I guess I'm not. Dang it.
You're going to have to audition for our team.
Yeah.
We don't take it lightly.
We have an opening, though. So
I would go with William over me. So.
I guess geographically, you might be more available than William. He's up in Arlington. So,
Oh yeah. If you're
Yeah.
down in Fredericksburg, I'm on that team. So.
All right. Well, it has now been a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, I appreciate
I know
it.
I tried to get us out earlier, but I feel really bad about rushing that. We got another 15 minutes in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
It was great having you. We're gonna
Yep.
try and get you back on. As
I appreciate it.
You're filling in for Vic today, so we can,
Yeah, he's
Vic is in California,
Yep.
mixing it up on the left coast.
yep.
Hopefully hitting the beach.
I hope so too.
I
Hopefully
really-
doing some podcast interviews. Forget the beach.
Yeah, when I talked to him, he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be unavailable," and he's like, "Well, no, apparently I can do work on the West Coast," and so he's doing something.
I'm sure he was happy about that. Is he sitting there with his In-N-Out or?
Right, right. Yeah, tough life. It's
Yeah,
a tough
tough
life.
It's just-
Be the deputy editor.
Yeah. Like if you could remote work from, like if you could pick up the ideal parts of California, that'd be a great place to be. Just to remote work in. Like I got my food, I got my beach, I got my mountains. Like I got everything I
Got
need.
your craft beer and
Yeah. Well, we got craft beer in Virginia.
that's
so-
true. It is a growing
Yeah.
growing sector of wine and craft beer
Yeah.
and ciders.
Well,
Cider. I'm into
yeah,
cider.
Our ciders are big.
Like
Yeah.
that too.
So it's a good place to be if you like to drink.
And on that note,
On that note, this has been Scuttlebutt, a Marine Corps Association podcast. I'm Nick. That's Nancy. That is Tim. And our opinions are opinions and don't reflect the Marine Corps Association or the Marine Corps. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you on the flip.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you.